Okay, cool. Matt Brown, thank you for being here.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, Chris.
Yeah, of course. So this is Matt Brown from Matt Brown's Guitar Studio, Chicago, Illinois, um, with us on Top Teachers. And so the way I usually have been getting started talking to people is just asking them how they got started playing. Like, how do you remember how old you were when you started playing as a player?
Yeah, I was 11, so I started pretty young. And I had a really good friend of mine that we were both kind of into, all of the big alternative bands at the time, Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, Soundgarden, that kind of thing. And we both just really wanted to play. And I think it was the summer after fifth grade, we kind of just, did the whole thing of mowing lawns and getting our first guitars and starting from there. So.
Nice. Do you remember what the guitar was?
Yeah, I had it was a Lotus Strat copy, and the neck of the guitar was completely warped within about a year, I would say.
Okay.
So, I'm not sure if those guitars are still out there, but don't get one.
I was gonna say it's like a solid plug.
Yeah, right.
Did you buy it at a music store or where did you get it?
Yeah, there was this real small mom and pop shop in town. I'm from a small town called Beaver Creek, Ohio, and yeah, it was believe called Beaver Valley Music was the name of the store, and they had maybe like five guitars tops of this brand. So if you didn't go all the way to Dayton, which was 40 minutes away, that was kind of the place you had to go to. So
That's kind of a blessing that you even had. How far was it from your house?
maybe 10, 15 minutes, not very far.
That's not bad at all. Did you, I mean, I'm just thinking, remember back in when I was younger, I used to just go to the music store and not without like not with the impetus to buy anything, but just like
Sure.
go check it out, like look at this thing, look at that thing. Like that was like a thing that to do.
For sure. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I definitely did that. I would say more as I got into playing guitar, as like a kind of a social thing. It's like, especially being in a small town, you don't have many things to do. It's, going to the guitar store and seeing the new gear it's a thing to do. So.
Yeah, man. So you started off, were you taking lessons or were you just picking it up on your own?
Yeah, I started right off the bat. I had a teacher that was finishing up his senior year of high school and went off to Berkeley to do classical guitar. So then, right, after a couple months of lessons with him, I picked up with his teacher, which is a classical guitarist named Danny Voris, and took lessons with him up until college. And then he actually became the professor at the college that I went to. So then I ended up taking lessons with him again. So pretty
That's
cool.
pretty rad. And
Yeah.
was it all classical stuff, or were you working on rock, pop, other stuff at the same time, or was it a pretty classical regimen for the instruction?
Well, for his instruction, it was pretty much curriculum based. So we were doing. I'm not sure if you're familiar with like the Berkeley series of guitar books or whatever, but
Sure.
we went through those books and it was kind of core guitar skills. Learning to improvise. But so it wasn't really genre specific, I would say, at all.
Sure.
Until later, until I got into classical guitar playing. So.
Are you a good student?
Yeah, I would say I was. I wasn't the greatest student until I got serious about guitar. Like when I was 11, I played sports and did a bunch of other things. I would say I was a good student in that I practiced every week, but I didn't hit the point where I was practicing, multiple hours a day until I was, 14 or 15, I would say. So,
That's still pretty heavy. Like that's a real practice there.
yeah.
So you're practicing, and is that pretty normal for your peers? Like the how you were playing? Did you have other friends that were also playing, or was it pretty much this was your thing, and you were the guy that was doing this in your school?
Yeah, well, I think I had a fairly unique experience in that I had maybe I want to say five friends that I went to high school with that are now professionals themselves, and three of us were professionals even in high school. So it was kind of a weird thing to have other very very serious players, that were kind of my age and my competition, so to speak. So.
Yeah, that probably helped you, like inspired you to go on, because I can't I mean, that's pretty cool for a high school kid to be playing that much and spurred on by his peers. Like that's rad. So
Yeah.
you go to school, and I think I saw on online that you went to music school.
Hmm.
So what was that like? What was the difference between going from, you know, kind of having a few hours, sneaking in a few hours to practice to, I guess it's now part of your job a little bit to be playing once you go to school.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it that way. I at first when I went to school, I didn't have a part-time job, so I was fortunate enough to be able to just focus on school, at least at first. So I would say my practice regimen, as far as the hours I was putting in, didn't change, but it was way more focused. I feel like in high school, I didn't have as clear of a, this is exactly what I need to do to get better or to get to the next level or get X and O or XYZ gig, whatever, So yeah, I think it was giving me that very specific, these are your weaknesses, these are your strengths, this is exactly what you need to do. I think was overall the kind of the big help that I got from teachers in college. So
I gotcha. So you get out of college, and what's the plan?
so I at first when I got out of college, I was barely teaching. I was just exclusively playing guitar and playing in a rock band professionally. So that's all I was doing at the time. And then, the world changed, as we all know, pretty drastically around that time. It was right when the housing market crashed. The whole tech boom had happened like a few years prior. So or maybe 5 to 10 years prior, but still, it was like the world started changing very quickly, at least as I saw it when I my
This
grad.
is, and so we're talking, this is 2008, 2009 ish, or what?
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. So I started. I kind of realized that I had to, at least if I was going to continue to make a living, to diversify what I was doing. So I started playing a whole lot of weddings and restaurant gigs. Picking up as many students as I could.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
yeah, that kind of thing.
So what was that difference? I mean, that's an adjustment. Like, one of the things that people have been talking about is the kind of mindset shift that happens when you go from being a player and being a student to being a teacher.
Sure.
Like, what kinds of students were you getting at? For maybe that's a good place to start. Like, who were your students basically at that time?
So I was teaching at Capital University in Ohio. They have like a community music school where they have, I would say newly graduated students teach members of the community basically. So it was, kind of across the board. I would
Adults, kids?
at that point in time, it was mainly kids, which is a huge change too. Like I only have maybe two kid or young students at this point, whereas 12 years ago, that was almost all of my clientele, I would say.
That must have been. So had you spent much time around children? I remember I did some years ago, I did a stint where I was teaching in a school, like I was co-teaching a class,
Hmm.
a technology class, but whatever, in a high school in New York City. And I remember walking into the school and just being in the hallway, and this school just like class bell rings, doors empty. It's like a movie. It's like wall to wall kids. And I
Yeah.
just remember being like, oh man, like what's happening? And just being so intimidated just by the very nature of just like dealing with a different age of person, like that you're not used to. Like as you go through, like I, for some reason at that time, I'd always been used to dealing with, basically like my age and up, like hanging out with it. And then all of a sudden, when the floor drops out and you're dealing with, a 13-year-old again, it's an adjustment. I wonder if you felt any of that. Like, how much time had you spent with young people before you went and started teaching them again? Do you know what I'm trying to ask there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I taught lessons in high school for 2 years, and I only had, I want to say, three young students. Like I wasn't teaching a whole lot,
Yeah.
just here and there to make some extra money. And so I had kind of been thrown to the wolves a little bit, with that. And um, but I didn't have as crazy of an experience. I was always just teaching students one on one. I didn't have to
Sure, sure.
groups or anything like that. So I feel like you're a little bit more in control if it's a one on one situation. Like
Yeah,
they
man.
can't like mob up and have a mutiny on you against you or whatever. So
What kinds of
um,
stuff were you teaching? So you're teaching kids that are, I imagine, like 12, 13, 14, or how old are your students?
yeah, yeah. I would say 12 to 15 was kind of the range mainly. And I think the biggest mistake that I made teaching those people was assuming that all of them would kind of be students like me, that they'd all be super interested and super motivated and all of that, which wasn't the case at all. So, uh, definitely a learning experience.
What was curriculum day one? Like when you walk in, you're like, "Hey, man, I'm so excited to teach you. Like, I have so much to show you. Like, here's this, this, and that." Like, what were you trying to teach them?
Yeah, I was, I had kind of just like this general curriculum that I had of scales and chords and basic techniques, technical exercises. I think the mistake I made, well, one of them was trying to force everybody to read music, which it can go one of two ways. They'll say sure, or they'll just withdraw. So
Yeah,
there was a lot of that. So I kind of with the teenagers moved into more of here are my interests, and I kind of helped learn the things that I thought were important by kind of just doing it through their interests mainly. So
so lesson one becomes what? Like, what did you say? Like, hey, man, welcome to these guitar lessons. Like, tell me about yourself. Like, what are you
yeah,
into?
yeah, exactly. What are you into? What kind of bands do you like, or artists? That kind of thing. What do you want to learn? Like what do you actually see yourself spending time doing? Is the big question. I think that I failed to ask, and a lot of new teachers that are teaching kids fail to ask too. So
Totally,
it's not what
totally. So,
I want you to learn. It's about what they want to learn.
so then you're doing this right after school. Take me through what happens next. Like once do you do this for a while? Do you go off do your own thing? Do you tour? Like do you come back? Like what's
So
your life like?
I was working teaching private lessons, and then like my world kind of fell apart at that point in time, job wise. The college I was teaching at, they decided to, they were having budget issues and decided to shut down the community music school, even though it wasn't really costing them a lot of money. So I thought it was a really poor decision. So, I was that was my main source of income. So I was like, all right, well, some of the students I was able to keep going with, but a lot of them I couldn't. And I was actually commuting an hour to work and back every day that I was teaching there. So I had to drop that job. And
Man, and if you don't have a full schedule, then it's just like you're driving 2 hours for one lesson or
yeah,
something.
exactly. It's pointless. You're either breaking even or losing money. So
Yeah.
around that time, I started working for a company called Jam Play, which I imagine you're familiar with.
Oh yeah, I know them.
Yeah, so one of the guys I went to high school with, he doesn't work with them now, but he was one of the original owners. And so at that point in time, I was kind of out in the world looking, and he heard that I was looking for a job, so I ended up working with them for about
That's
eight.
cool. Doing teaching or working in the office or what was your
I really did everything. It's stuff for like obviously like computer programming. As you know, I know nothing about technology.
right from
So,
before the
uh,
show? Yeah, yeah.
I was like consulting. I was doing transcriptions. That's something I've been doing for 10, 12 years now. So transcribing the lessons and notating everything. Teaching lessons. They did like live Q&A sessions. I did like a chord library for them, kind of like what you have on your app.
Sure, sure.
That kind of stuff.
Was
Whatever they.
that I got you. And how did you do that for a long time? How long did you do that for?
I believe about 8 years.
Wow, that's a long time. That's awesome.
Hmm.
Um, and so that takes us to like relatively recently, actually. Were you teaching on your own at that time as well, or
Yeah.
yeah?
Yeah, private lessons, playing in a band too. So yeah, yeah.
Nice, man. So at that time, so and now do you do more teaching now, or do you do less teaching than you used to, or
I definitely do a lot more. I would say during those years I was doing mainly transcribing work. That was my main job for GM Play for the later years. Uh,
gotcha?
and yeah, I started teaching private lessons again during that time, but mainly just doing the band and GM Play. And when the GM Play thing ended, then I've gone back to making my most of my living teaching. I'm still transcribing, but um,
I gotcha.
mainly teaching.
I saw I saw you're doing a lot on YouTube, or I've seen. I don't know if you're doing a lot, but it seems like there's a lot of your
Yeah.
work on YouTube, and you've been doing a lot of lessons on there. I was wondering how you kind of figure that into what you're doing. Like, do you think of that as a way to get new students? Do you think of that as just like a cool? Not, I don't mean to say like a cool thing, but just like, is that I mean, a thing unto itself? Like, it I don't know exactly what I'm asking, but it seems like you take
No, I know
YouTube
what you're
pretty
asking.
seriously, and I'm just like, can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what is that?
Yeah,
What's your
that
plan? What are you up to there?
it's a really complicated kind of thing. There's many reasons why I do it. I enjoy doing it is one obviously, but like if you're a small business like mine is, and I don't employ, other teachers, like I'm not like say take lessons or lesson face where it's like this business where it's this conglomerate of tons of teachers. So I found that paying to advertise through whether it's Google, Facebook, whatever is totally pointless and just it's like taking my money, burning it. So I basically use it to out advertise the competition, and I get paid to advertise instead of paying to advertise is how I look at it.
You
So
mean
that,
like do you mean like in you put the tutorials online, you do the lessons, you do the song, and then you get ad money from doing that, and then also you get clients from that, like people will email you about it.
yeah. Yeah, so
Nice.
that's also too. I like make some of the transcriptions that I offer from the songs available for free, and so then I have a way to contact people too, and it's a way to kind of build community as well. I've kind of built up this kind of cool little group of people that email me, and I email back, and you just have a conversation about guitar like we're having, I guess. So
Right, right.
yeah.
That's cool, man. And then do any of those do any of your clients uh students that you work with now, like they come from the YouTube thing? Like basically, I guess what I'm trying to edge into is something that's interesting that has come up in other conversations, like um what the process is like. So basically, like everybody I've talked to kind of has some version of this story where they go from starting to play, getting into the guitar, taking it more seriously, performing, adding lessons at some point. That mind shift between like being a performer and a teacher is super interesting.
Hmm.
And then there's also that shift of from being a teacher to being like a business owner,
Mm.
that is super interesting. Which like it seems like there's like a huge shift from those all those three kind of like hats, wearing those hats. And
Yeah.
so I was kind of like edging into like um, YouTube, it seems like, is one way that you are like wearing that business owner hat. I'm just wondering what else have you found? Because part of the interesting thing of this series, I'm hoping, is that other teachers will listen to it. So like, not in your zip code, of course, but like,
I don't care if they do.
yeah, like what else have you been doing that's been working? Like, how do you what's been a good way to kind of like get people in, and what hasn't worked at all?
I think what I'm noticing, at least for me, is when I first started teaching, I was kind of known, at least in Columbus, as it's like the guy that can play like every style, well. But I wasn't the best at any one thing, if that makes sense. So, I played classical guitar, I played blues gigs, jazz, rock, country, even a little bit too. So I was trying to be that guy, if you want to learn anything, come to me. But I've kind of noticed that like people's interests in just the sheer number of guitar teachers out there have kind of forced me to be a little bit more, I guess, niche oriented. So I'm kind of just focusing on what I do the best and what I enjoy the most. And I think the community or just the world at large has responded to that a little bit better, since there are a million other people that play every style pretty well at this point. So you got to have your thing. I think so. That's kind of what I've been focusing on lately.
As which style?
I would say, I'm just a rock and roll musician, more or less, at this point. That's the kind of bands I've always played in, and kind of stuff people typically come to me to want to learn as well. So.
Yeah, man. I have a potentially sensitive question, so feel free to I think there's a slap me in the face button on the Zoom interface somewhere. You can.
Okay.
Do you feel like because you look like a rock and roll musician that is part of it? Do you know what I mean? Like you have awesome hair and a beard. Is that part of it?
Maybe.
And you're wearing plaid also, which is perfect.
Yeah, could be. I never really ask people directly that question. I think at this point, there's just not that many people in Chicago that are really doing it seriously for their living. Like the Old Town School of Music, I know that they've been having financial problems, sadly, recently, and closed a location. And, I think people are just like, this person doesn't seem like an axe murderer, and they're still out there doing it, is the main thing at this point. With private lessons, anyway.
Yeah. So I assume, prior to a year ago, taught mostly in person. And I assume since the last year, more of that has shifted online. Can you talk a little bit about what that transition was like? Like basically take me back to a year ago, February, March, 2020. Like what's your day-to-day life? And then what was, I remember when I was in January or something, I read this newspaper article about, I'd heard things about this virus and whatever. And then the thing that got me was pictures of some of them building a hospital in a day, or no, in a week. They built this huge hospital in 1 week.
Right.
And I was like, that seems intense. This seems like it could be a real big, and then it wasn't too long before the things changed. I wonder what was it like for you as you're kind of watching the news happen, and then at some point you probably couldn't do in-person stuff anymore.
Right. So I was actually probably, I would say maybe 65-35 or maybe 70-30 as far as online to in-person people already. So I think
cool.
Maybe an outlier as far as people that teach in person. So I had a lot of, online people already. So yeah, I mean, going back, it was, what was it, February, or, I first started hearing about it. And I think maybe it's just me being kind of a paranoid person, or I think maybe I took it a lot more seriously than other people did, or I won't say I took it more seriously, but I thought the duration of this would be, way longer than most other people did. I had a student, we were actually laughing about it the other day. She sent me this text and she's like, oh, well, maybe send you a text in, another couple of weeks when this is all over, So she was thinking, it was only going to be a couple of weeks or a month at tops, which is, I think what most people thought at first.
Sure. Yeah. It's just okay. So at some point, so you thought from the very beginning that, or you had a hunch that this could be a big deal and affect everything. What were you doing for? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I had been reading these kind of crazy epidemiology articles from National Geographic, and they definitely had been doing a good job of scaring me of, we had the, what was it, swine flu and the bird flu and stuff like that, and they're saying, well, another something like this is coming, and it's going to be way more serious, and the whole world is totally unprepared for it. And
yeah. I remember, I think for me, the big one, there was a hospital thing that was oh, wow, that's pretty insane that they built a hospital in a week. And then when I heard that Italy, the entire country of Italy is closed, I was like, wait, what? You can shut down a country? I did not compute at all. That was the point when I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy.
Yeah.
So what you were teaching before about 70%, you said, were you doing, what is that? Skype, Zoom?
Yeah, I would say both those. A little bit of FaceTime too, which I don't think is the greatest, but I'll use whatever people like the best. Whatever they want to use. So that's kind of my approach to it.
We'll cut that out because Apple's actually a huge sponsor of the
Oh, are they?
podcast.
Okay, yeah, fine by me.
No, I'm just kidding. They're not. Um, but so you start teaching. So the 30%, did most of those people come along, or did you lose some of those people? How did that kind of work out?
Well, at first, my experience was, a lot of people were, of course, quarantining and everything, doing all of that, but I didn't lose too many students at first. I would say as we got maybe 4 months in, that's when things really kind of started to change for me business wise. Just bad things started happening. People started losing their jobs, getting furloughed, had loved ones, or they themselves passed away. Anything you can imagine that is bad that can happen to a human being, but basically started happening 3 or 4 months in. So that's when I had to say, okay, well, what am I going to do? How am I going to stay afloat? How am I going to handle things? All those kind of questions.
So what'd you do?
So I basically I took a step back, and said, okay, well, there's not a whole lot that I can do to control this situation. First of all, I think that's something that people have to realize if they haven't already. Is there's not a whole lot you can control. So it doesn't make sense to worry about the things you absolutely can't control. And try to focus your energy on the things you can. So I put my energy basically into songwriting at first. Like my band's, working on an album currently. So spending more time on the band, I would say, and getting that going, and just kind of like revamping how I advertise and how I reach out to the community and reach people and that kind of thing is I would say what I did.
That sounds like a really good attitude. It's kind of like, I forget, there's an adage about that that's like, control what you can and don't worry about the rest or whatever. I forget what it is, but there's something sager than what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, some smarter guy than me had a great quote. Yeah.
um, I think there's there's more I could talk about, but what I want to do is I want to make sure we get a chance to tell people how, if they're listening to this and they're like, man, this guy seems awesome, how they can study with you. But before that, I wanted to ask you, I'm asking everybody the same series of questions. So you can feel free to be as brief or as verbose as you want, whatever. But everybody's answering these questions. And so the idea is that it's basically, I'm tricking you into making a super cut, right? Like we'll just bounce back and
Oh
forth.
yeah.
Yeah.
You want
Okay.
seconds?
So what was the first chord that you ever learned on the guitar? Oh, wait, sorry. Before I do that, there
Yeah,
was a very important question I wanted to ask you about distance learning, and this is actually good because you've done so much before. What are some of the things that worked really well, that tend to work well with long distance students? Like, I imagine there's things that, because you're used to corresponding with them by email, maybe you send them more like tracks to play along with or exercises, and they're into that like stuff more. Or one thing I've heard is that it's hard to jam with people, like it's hard to play along.
right.
I wonder if you can talk about some of the things that are kind of work well with distance learning, and some of the stuff that's been a challenge.
Yeah, so I think the one that you mentioned that's nearly impossible is playing along with another person. So I guess a big tool that I've kind of always used is the Guitar Pro software. So, it for those of you that might not be familiar that are listening to this, I would say the big advantage is that you can play along with the software. So, for instance, if you're playing, I don't know, a Guns N' Roses song, let's say, you can take away the rhythm guitarist's part. So you can be the rhythm guitarist and play along with the band, or you can take Slash away and play his parts, or that kind of thing. So it's not as good as playing with like a solid teacher, you know, a real person, but you know, it definitely is very beneficial, and it kind of gets the job done. So that's one thing.
Nice. Any other workarounds that you've found over the years?
You know, I just sending lots of PDFs to people. I try to, you know, send PDFs before, and if there are things that we talk about during the lesson that I think needs to be clarified, then sending some after as well. You mentioned playing with backing tracks, so you know, thankfully YouTube is kind of a cool source for that these days. There's so much there in the rest of the internet for people to jam with. So
Totally. Yeah, the internet is big and getting bigger. So it's like if you can't find it today on the internet, it's just like, oh, just wait, man. It'll show up.
yeah, right. Yeah, that's totally true.
Okay, cool. Closing questions. I have some questions for you.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds good.
They are not deep questions. The first chord, do you remember the first? We talked a little bit about you getting started, but do you remember when you started playing chords, what the first chord you learned was?
Yeah, the A chord. So it was this book that the first chapter was the A chord, which in my opinion is probably not the first one you should learn, but that was it. And it was the key of A. So like the second chapter was you learn the 4 and 5 chords, so the D and E chords, so you can play some little songs and progressions and stuff. So yeah, those
Yeah,
are the
for
first
sure.
three for me.
What about what you teach your students? What are the first chord? What's the first chord you start your students on when you start them on?
I teach them a G that is only played with fretting with just one finger. So basically, you've got like the third fret G note on the first string, and then the rest are all open strings. So you can play a version of Something by the Beatles just on the top 4 strings, and the chords just use one finger each. And I've seen, you know, children as young as 3 or 4, you know, be able to play that song, you know, just, you know, with one finger. So my whole approach is do chords with one finger, then some of the chords that you could do 2 fingers, like maybe E minor, C major 7th or something like that, and then kind of 3 fingers 4.
Nice,
Mm-hmm.
nice. That's solid. What was the first song you remember playing yourself when you picked up the
So
guitar?
are we talking like a real song, or like Mary Had a Little Lamb?
I think either's fine.
So, oh, geez. You know, I would probably say the first song I ever learned was the Ode to Joy. Just, you know, 2-string melody, you know, the theme. Then the first like real song I was proud to learn was, I don't know if you remember December by Collective Soul. It
Oh
was like
man, I'm gonna
really
find it.
mid '90s.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, sing a couple bars
It's
of it.
don't think about, don't
Oh
speak
yeah,
about. You know, I don't know how the melody goes, but you know, that's kind of like the vocal hook.
turn
Uh,
your head, baby.
yeah, that one. Yeah,
Yeah, nice. And this is like how long after you started playing were you playing playing that song?
about 3 months, I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. What is one thing that you tell your students to do that they reliably do not do?
Ooh, practice with a metronome. Yeah, I think that's the most important thing that everybody should do, and it's the thing that I struggle to get people to do the most, I think.
Nice. What is something that you tell them to do that they reliably do?
Practice the songs that they like, that are fun for them, you know, their favorite songs. That's what everybody always manages to do. So
Gotcha. So you give them 3 things to do, and they'll come and be like, "Hey, man, you'll never guess. I got the chorus down." And you're like, "Great. What about this?"
yeah, can you play it with the metronome?
um, what is this is kind of related to the song thing? Like, what is your go-to song to teach people who have never played? So, like, what do you give people as their first song, basically?
Their first song, for chords, I do Something by the Beatles, like
Right.
you know, I was telling you earlier, like kind of a stripped down version in the key of G that, you know, just uses one finger for each chord. So for chords, that one, and usually people are impressed that they can play a, you know, full song, um, you know, in their first lesson. So it's kind of a confidence builder. You know, most people are like, there's no way I'm going to be able to get good at this when they come in. And I had the same fear. You know, it seems like you have this mountain in front of you to climb. That seems impossible. So that one, and then I actually do Song of Joy too. That one, Skip to My Lou and Mary Had a Little Lamb, just playing melodies on a couple of strings to start with tabs.
Nice.
And whatnot, so.
Nice.
Mhm.
If you just a couple more questions. If you were not a guitar teacher, what job would you like to try? And something outside of music and Tyler.
Yeah, so I actually went almost before I went to college, went to film school at UCLA. So probably film would be my other career, and I'm still kind of in it a little bit. Like a professor of mine had been talking about, you know, putting together a screenplay and getting that going and everything. But yeah, that would definitely be it.
That's awesome. So screenwriting or directing or
Yeah,
which part of
screenwriting
film?
actually.
Nice.
Mhm.
And then lastly, if which instrument that you don't play would you like to learn how to play and play well?
Drums, so then I can fire everybody. No, I'm just joking. That's totally a joke. So, in case the drummer I play with hears that, but no, I mean it would be, you know, it's like the one instrument, say in like a rock band that I can't play and I know next to nothing about. You know, so yeah, drums would be the one for me, I think. So.
And it just looks like the most fun, man. Like I feel like anytime I'm sure you've gotten back there and like done a John Bonham like whatever, like it's just fun.
Yeah, seems like a really
I'm
good way to get exercise. Or gosh, what was the movie? The Big Short I was watching the other night, and
oh yeah, yeah.
Michael, I forget his last name, the guy that predicted the housing crash, was just like pounding like I forget Slayer or something terribly. But I mean that would be a really good way to get some stress out.
Oh yeah, man. I'm with you. I think that is you're the second person who said drums, and I'm if you count me, then that's three. So
Okay,
I'm into it.
cool.
Before we go, I want to make sure that if people are listening, they know how they get a hold of you. Where should they go? Should they go to your YouTube? They go to your website? Like, how do they find out more about you and you know, take lessons with you if they want?
Yeah, so you know, if you want to take lessons for free, go to YouTube. If you want private one-on-one instruction, you know, get a hold of me. So another thing that I do also that's I think is hopefully going to become a bigger thing is a lot of companies are doing these little things where like or a student can send you just a real quick video of, okay, here's me playing this song, and then you can send a video back, and it's like half the price of a private lesson. So
Sure.
that's kind of a cool new thing. But yeah, Matt Brown's Guitar Studio. That's my business and my YouTube channel too. So
Nice, man. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I had a really good time, and hopefully people will be into it too.
me too. Yeah, and you know, if you want me to share this on my channels and everything, I'd love to. So
That sounds great, man.
yeah,
I'll like that's the end of the. I'll cut it there for the actual like thing, but
sure.
I'll I think probably like it'll be probably March by the time these come out, and I don't know which order yours will be in, but as soon as I have like a as soon as I've decided as soon as I've wrapped up like this round and have an idea about when yours is going to go, I'll send you an email and let you know. Um, and I think it's going to be awesome. Like basically, the plan is to there'll be a podcast, and then it'll go on the YouTube, and then you know a few clips from each one will go out to. So I'll definitely like tag you and let me know if there's a specific link you want me to put in the notes, but below the stuff to point people to you other than your main site.
Yeah, that's the main site would be great. So yeah,
Cool,
man,
man.
this was a lot of fun. You know, it's
Yeah,
also
thank you
cool
so much.
to talk to other musicians and hear what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's going to be fun to have the collection too, and I'm going to try to keep it going, um, and keep these going out. So hopefully it'll be a fun listen. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what other people have to say. Honestly, you know,
For
I
sure.
guess
Awesome.
when you first contacted me about this, I was like, yeah, I wonder what other people are going through.
Yeah, it's like it's been a weird year.
Hmm.